Here we go. All right, and Yud Gimel, Yud basically Gimel Talmud. It's very hard for us to understand how it can be that Judaism is really the how do you say the key to world peace and prosperity and meaning and everything. And in Judaism also, I mean, Jews are just like 1.2 or something like that percentage of the world. One of every 500 people is Jewish. I suspect that it's actually we're actually outnumbered more than that. But let's say 500 to 1. But in Judaism, it all depends on one person. One person. And that one person is supposed to arouse all the Jews. And then all the Jews will arouse the whole world. Arouse them to what? What are they supposed to arouse them? Arouse them to the fact that there's a creator and that the world is a very, very difficult and very disappointing and threatening and confusing place. But the creator put us here purposely so that we'll refine ourselves and we'll make the decision to be the servants of the creator. And everything we do the same things we're doing now, but only do it the way that God wants. Right? To have sexual relations, 100% it's okay, but only with your wife if you're married. Only a man and woman should have sexual relations. Right? You want to build things, good buildings. Don't build rockets and knives and things like that, right? To kill people. Building things is good. What about money? Money is a good thing. Communism says money is the worst thing. Money is great. Money is great. There should be rich people. But with your money, you have to do what God wants. Give charity. See to it that there's no poor people. In other words, that's the idea of the future redemption. And it all depends on the Jews. And the Jews depend on one person. That one person is what's called the Moses of every generation. Just like going out of Egypt, the Jewish people were in terrible shape. And one person came along, Moses, and he fixed the whole thing up. Because that's what Moshiach is going to do. Now, every generation, there has to be one Moses. And this one Moses, he stands against the confusion and, how do you say, the power of this world, the intimidation of this world, and the luring of the world, and etc. And he only looks at things the way God looks at it, and he tries to be an example, and he is an example for the whole world. If the world takes the example, that's a different story. The example of this is the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. There was possibly no more evil movement in the history of the world than communism. Communism was, in a way, the ultimate evil. Ultimate evil. Why was it the ultimate evil? Because, well, first of all, it never worked. It always made everybody poor. And in order for it to accomplish its goals, as it killed a lot of people. A lot of people died. And it was, total subjugation and oppression of the masses, of everybody. Communism. And in order to do this, put it in everybody's mind, you have to be miserable. That's the essence of communism. You have to be miserable. You have to make a revolution. You have to be miserable with the world. Your problems are everybody else. Your problem is not you. You don't have to work on yourself at all. Your problem is the bourgeois and the rich people. The problem is everybody else. Get rid of everybody else, and everything's going to be okay. That's a big lie. That's a big lie. Everyone is in the world to work on themselves. Work on themselves. And when you work on yourself, then you'll be able to help the world. First of all, you have to fix up yourself. Communism says, no, you're not the fault. The fault is the rich people. The fault is the fault is this. Okay, anyway, so here communism, like in communist Russia, I mean, perhaps the most oppressive system that there ever was. There was the whole thing with Big Brother watches, everybody was a spy and everybody was this. They said that Stalin killed like 50 million of his own people, and that what was his name, Mao Zedong, killed like 100 million people. Not numbers that were, but it was all for the good. It was all for communism. So here we have one person stood against all of communism, all of communist Russia. Everyone else was afraid, and justly so. One person stood up again, and that was the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. How did he stand against? What did he do? He educated children to Judaism. He provided mohalim and shochatim to make circumcisions and to slaughter animals in a proper way, to make Jewish weddings, to educate children the way they're supposed to be. So this was in direct opposition of the Rebbe had a whole what is that, network of these underground schools and things like that, and he totally just openly defied the government. And he told them, he said, listen, according to communism, people have a right to educate their children. You have a right to religion. You have a right to religion. According to the Communist Manifesto, whatever it is, they wanted to. In any case, so they imprisoned him, sentenced him to death, and miraculously, almost a month later, after they imprisoned him, they released him. They released him. When did they release him? On the 12th day of Tammuz, he got the news that he was released. On the 13th day, he got the papers because it was a holiday for them So by means of this, it was the only man that openly defied communism. There were a lot of Jews that did somewhat the same thing as the Rebbe, but in a much more, how do you say, quiet way, that they educated maybe a couple people in their homes or whatever. But the Rebbe had a whole system. He sent out his Hasidim, hundreds of young men that went out and educated young people. In Russia, communist Russia, was unheard of, and a lot of them got caught, a lot of them got killed. Okay, so, but he got out. The 12th and the 13th of Tammuz is the victory of life over death. Communism was death. Communism was like pure evil egotism. And one of the basic steps to secure communism was to do away with religion. You have to be loyal to you have to think about all mankind, not about God. God is selfish. And not only that, God takes people away from bitterness. If you're religious, then you're not going to make a revolution against the government. You got to be miserable. You have to be and blame the government. You have to blame the rich people. You have to blame. And if you're religious, then you'll think, listen, whatever it is comes from God. The main thing, I have to serve God. I think, okay, all the other religions talk about going to heaven and things like that. But nevertheless, you become complacent. Oh, complacent is bad. Religion makes you happy with your lot. And that you should never be, according to communism. Until communism takes over, then you have to be happy. Then you have to be happy, right? If you're poor before communism, you have to be miserable and want to make a revolution. But if you're miserable and if you're poor after communism, which they certainly were, they said that communism worked. That made everybody commonly poor. Nobody had anything. Says, but if you're miserable afterwards, then you're a counter-revolutionary. Then you get, and that's why he killed 50 million people. Stalin killed 50 million people. Okay, so here's the Rebbe coming and saying that God does exist, and God does not want us to be complacent, and that's why I am making an open war against you. And the God of Judaism wants this physical world to be good, and communism will not make it good. So this was direct opposition to Stalin, and the Rebbe won. He got out, and Stalin did not get out. Among the stories which the Rebbe, the previous Rebbe told, was, I told you a little bit about this yesterday, regarding his imprisonment. And his release. There are some stories which are told by the time when he was arrested, and his arrest was like in its full force, not when he was becoming released or whatever. One of the stories is like this: Bald vi men had der Rebbe, as soon as the Rebbe was brought into jail, as he made a firm decision, a firm decision by himself, as soll nit chas v'shalom nit far liren. he made himself the decision that he would not lose his resolve. He wouldn't let them control him. When Erzal Farzeh, and he would treat them, the young men that of the GPO, that was like the KGB in those days, and these were Jews. The people that were the murderers that were trying to destroy Judaism were Jews. It was Jews against Judaism. It was the what you call it? It was called Yevsektia, the Jewish sector. Very shortly, I think even before 1930, Stalin had them all killed. He had them all, tried. Of course, nobody was killed arbitrarily. You were given a trial of like 4 minutes or whatever, and then you were killed. They all were wiped out. But in any case, while they were, they call high on the hog. They were sitting high, so they thought they were going to destroy Judaism, and they got themselves a big fish. They got the previous Rebbe, and they were going to kill him. Oh, if they could do that, then that was a real accomplishment. So the Rebbe made a firm resolution that he wasn't going to pay any attention to them at all, and he would certainly not be intimidated by them at all. Nit nor soll sich nit rechnen. Not only would he not make any reckoning with them in the things which are relevant to Judaism or fearing God, nor soll bechlal nit halten for kein Metzias. He wouldn't treat them as any existence whatsoever. Like somebody put on a record and was giving him orders. They weren't really people or humans that you had to really take them seriously. Bizer auf sie geguckt, they looked at them, wie sie wollten sein, b'lashon hara, ka'ein v'efes mamish, like they are nothing. He looked at them like they are totally non-existent. We're going to see that they beat him up also. At der matzav nefesh, this same situation, hat sich bei ihm nicht geämpft euch noch dem. At the end of it, this decision didn't stop even after when he was already bestoffen. He was already punished. Right? They beat him up for nitvelen an, for not answering any of their questions. Right? They ask him a question. How old are you? Answer my question. What's your name? Answer my question. Right? You know why you're here? Answer the question. And they hit him. They beat him up. And he refused to deal with them. The straf, the punishment, was as men hat him verspart. They imprisoned him in a room was as given einfilled bis a gewese hoich. It was filled up to a certain height with blood, with mud. Oy was zu ansparen sich. So therefore, he couldn't possibly lay down or sit down. It was a small room, especially designed for this. And it was very primitive, but nevertheless very effective. Any normal person would say, "Okay, let me out. I'll do whatever you want. Let me out of this place." So they put the Rebbe in this room that was like filled up, let's say, to his knees with mud. And it says not only that, to Zaina in their blotta, to be in this mud, when oif devant, and on the walls, a room gekrechen were climbing achbarim, Ramashim, all sorts of strange rats, on the mud. They were climbing on the mud or up the walls, rats and all sorts of weird creepers and centipedes, whatever it was. So you couldn't really touch the walls either. Und in Atem Clara, and in that prison, hat men in up gehalten a kargen me'esleis. They kept him for one 24-hour period. So in those 24 hours, he had to be in this awesome, frightening place that didn't allow him any rest whatsoever. He had to stand. Aber euch Nachman, but even after that, is by him als gebleven starker hachlata. But nevertheless, it did not change his strong resolve at all. As soll sich nit rechnen mit sei. That he said he himself would not consider them at all. He wasn't afraid of them. He wouldn't follow them. They couldn't bribe him. They couldn't do anything to them. They were like nothing. Now you have to remember also another thing, that they put him in this little room. This was at least one day after he got in. He was supposed to have been killed a few hours after he came in. That was the orders. He was supposed to be shot a few hours after he entered. And somehow or other they told him to go down this hall to room number 1, whatever. And he made a wrong turn. He didn't know what was going to happen. So he went, and he was on his own. He made a wrong turn, and he was sort of confused immediately when they brought him in. And he didn't understand what there was. And there was this sort of bench outside of one of the rooms. And he sat down, and he rolled himself a cigarette. He had a cigarette, and he rolled himself a cigarette, and he smoked a cigarette. Someone came out of the room and said, "What are you doing here? What are you doing here?" And he said, I was just brought. I was arrested. He was, "Well, where are you supposed to be?" So he said, "I was supposed to go into room number 1." And the person started to shake. He said, "You're supposed to be into room number 1, and you're sitting over here?" And he said, "Yes." And eventually people came and they brought him over to room, but it was already too late. They were supposed to have killed him immediately, and the time passed by, and they were busy killing other people, I guess, whatever it was. And so they didn't, and so they mixed it up. So, but afterwards, the people from the Yevtexia, they wanted to at least make him comply, to sign papers, to admit to things, to scare him, to do something. And the Rebbe refused. The Rebbe said, "No way, I'm a Jew. A Jew is connected to God. God creates you. My God creates you." They said, "Oh yeah, let's see." And they put him in this room, and he said, we'll see what his attitude was. But his attitude was, "You cannot have any say over me." In der Tfisa Kammer, wo der Rebbe is given, in the room where the Rebbe sat, hat men nicht gekannt unterscheiden zwischen Tag und Nacht. You couldn't tell the difference between day and night. This is after they took him out of this this little torture chamber that he was in. They put him. He said in the room that he was inside of the prison, and you couldn't tell it was day and night. Well, in the Kammer, because in that room, in that cell, is given nit mehr via cleaner fence. There was a little window unter der Stelle, but under the ceiling, und euch die Fenster in this window, it was verstellt mit a gegenwärtiger Wand. There was a wall opposite it. In other words, the window in his room opened up to the hall. So it wasn't, you couldn't see outside. You didn't know it was day and night. Was hat zum Cheder nit zugelassen, the Licht from Tag, the light of the day didn't go in. Nor light the eingestellte Sidre, you only knew whether it was day or night because of the order of the jail, right? They would wake everybody up at, the crack of dawn, and they would bring everybody, what is a hot water or something to drink, 2 hours later. So according to that, he knew what time it is. Und die bestimmte Stunden auf zu bringen warme Wasser, the times when they woke people up and the times when they brought water and things like that. From that, the Rebbe knew what the hours of the day. Thursday, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, was the first day of Tammuz. El Fazeger at 11 o'clock, Farmittag, before noon, is their Sipor, in their Sipor hut, their Rebbe, the Rebbe said that in general, in Turma davening, he would daven barichos. Okay, now just one second. This story now happened after the Rebbe refused to leave the first day of Tammuz, the first day, Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. Thursday, this is the first day. Okay, we'll see. Let's see. Zayin and Arayin Gekumen came in Shotrim. This is, in other words, this is the 30th day of the month of Sivan. It's also Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. So on that day, soldiers came into his room and im bafoilen sich oip gestellen. They said, or they ordered him that he should stand up. They should stand up. Interesting. Okay, one second. They ordered him to stand up. These soldiers came in, the policemen, haben geredet, they spoke Russian. But the Rebbe, that he would only answer them in Yiddish. So he answered them that he's not going to stand up. In his cell, there was ein gespürt as Bishas in the prison was the order of was that when soldiers came in to give the arrested person some sort of an announcement, as you had to stand. Dafür up nehmen ständig. You had to listen to what they said when you were standing up. Das hat gedarf wesen der Arrestieren in unter unterwerfen sehr herrschen. This shows that the prisoner was under their control, and therefore the Rebbe said, "I'm not going to stand up." Vestois, it comes out as einer from one of these policemen was a Jew. Was hat verstanden der Antwort? He understood the answer what the Rebbe said in Yiddish. And then, on the Rebbe's answer, haben sie zu ihm weder gesagt auf Russisch. They continued speaking in Russian, and they said, "Oib du west, if you're not going to follow what we're going to say, is we're going to hit you." Hat the Rebbe answered, the Rebbe said, "No." The policeman, he did so. He hit the Rebbe, and they left. Later on, is a Ryan gekommen, a zweite Gruppe, there came another group of policemen. Among them was a Jew who was called Lulav. And this Lulav was one of the policemen that he arrested the Rebbe in the beginning. He arrested the Rebbe. This was, a week earlier. He had arrested the Rebbe 2 weeks earlier. Is bringing him into Fisa. He was one of that brought the Rebbe into prison in the beginning. This Lulav, I think this Lulav, there was a Lulav and a Nachmanson. So I think either both of them, for sure, one of them had been a Chabad Chassid. As Lulav had gestammt from Chassidim. Lulav came from Chassidim, right? Und hat seine Rede zu Rebbe, and when he said to the Rebbe, he said to the Rebbe, said, "Rebbe, was verführt ihr in Mitzvah? Why are you playing with them? Was macht ihr mit Machzokos? Why are you trying to be so defiant? Sie kommen doch euch ansagen, they're coming to tell you a good news is as me heißt euch stellen, when they tell you to stand up, so stand up." The Rebbe said, the Rebbe answered them, "Oiv dem garnit geantwortet." On this, the Rebbe didn't say anything, just continued sitting. Hat Lulav weder gesagt, the Rebbe said, You want to have it get hit again? Aber euch, oif them, and on this also the Rebbe didn't say anything. If so, what they did is they hit the Rebbe again. Einer from Zay, one of them had them given a klop, gave a hit to the Rebbe under the Rebbe's. So at this time, the Rebbe was like 47 years old or something. No, how old was he? Yeah, something like that, 47. So he hit the Rebbe under the chin, which the Rebbe said later on that he felt this years afterwards. Okay, now you can ask yourself, what's the big deal? Stand up. What's the big thing? The Rebbe wanted to show them that no force in the world would have any control over Judaism, and that the Rebbe was a representative of Judaism, that he wasn't going to take the easy way out. I think you've heard the story before, and I'll continue the story again. That the Rebbe used to walk. Our Rebbe used to walk to see his mother every day, and there was, I guess, one of the store owners or whatever, a black fellow he used to go by, and the Rebbe used to wave to him, say good morning. And the Jewish people, the Rebbe would just sort of tip his head like that. So one of the Jewish owners said, why don't you wave and say to me, good morning, and this, you only tip your head. Why not? Should be the other way around. You should, bow down to bow down to the non-Jew, and to me you should say hello. And the Rebbe said, I learned from my father, I think, that you never bow your head down to a non-Jew. You never bend to a non-Jew. The Jewish people were the representatives of the creator of the universe. The creator of the universe, a representative of the creator of the universe, of the king, he doesn't subjugate himself in any way. To be friendly, you have to be friendly. I say hello, I speak to the person. So it's the same thing here. The Rebbe said, and this was under threat of his life. He said, you can do whatever you want to me. That's your business. But to subjugate me, I'm not going to bend my head to anyone. As Oich der Nachiben afterwards is gekommen, there came another group of policemen the third time, and among them was also a Jew, which his name was Kavalov, and he said, stand up. As the Rebbe said that I'm not going to stand up. Menat invader geschlagen. If so, they hit him again. Der was hat geschlagen is this Jew, the Jew Kavalov did it. Aber es hat gar nicht getan, but it didn't help at all. So Kavalov came and he went mad, just mad, and he said, I'll show you who's the teacher over here. And the Rebbe said, no, you're going to find out as wenn it sich wer Vemen. He says, I'll show you as the teacher. And the Rebbe said, you're going to find out who's teaching who. A Gaveset cites Peter a little bit later, as they came in soldiers, and they said to him that, come with us. Dort hat men im reingesagt the idea. They said, they gave him the knowledge that Verlichtung was Lulav had der Mund as Miloz. He gave him the good news that they made it easier his imprisonment, and they said you're going to get out of prison. On Mifarshiktim, if 3 years, you're going to go 3 years into exile. Okay, at the time that the Rebbe was zugegangen, when the Rebbe came to the table, he saw on the table that there was a paper, and on it was his name, and on it was what they decided to do to him. On the top, it said, death, kill him. And it was written, a line was written through there, 1 second, and it said, no, yet. Under that was written 10 years in exile, And it was also written, no. And finally, it says 3 years in Kostroma. When they told the Rebbe that he was going to be 3 years in Kostroma, so he said, how do you want to go there? So he said, I want to go there with the first class in I'll pay for it. Okay, so what actually happened in the end was the Rebbe refused to leave. He said, when am I going to arrive in Kostroma? They said, you're going to arrive on Shabbat. So he said, I'm not going to travel. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to go. And he said, not only that, as soon as it was found out that he was going to go to this place called Kostromar, said one of the Hasidim, who was named, I think his name was Dworkin, that he traveled there himself. He traveled to the city. It was a city, but it was far away in like, in what was it, in Kazakhstan or someplace far away, a terrible place. He went there and he fixed up the mikveh, and he already arranged that there would be children learning Torah. There was some Jews that lived there. So it was already arranged that the things that the Rebbe was thrown into prison for, that it would be there. But in the end, the Rebbe said, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to leave. So when he was in prison, I just want to say over in a short way. So he said that they wanted the Rebbe to sign certain papers. And the Rebbe said, I'm not going to sign anything. So they pulled out a gun, they put it to his head, and they said, this little toy has made a lot of people do what we want. And he said, this is the story about Rebbe Michal Dworkin, that he said that Rebbe said that little toy intimidates people that have many gods and one world. He said, but I have only one God, the creator of the universe. Right? A person that thinks that he's God, so he's ruled over little whims, whatever whims, all sorts of different whims and urges that he has, those become his gods. Those become what drives him. He says, you have all these other urges and things that drive you. I have only one God, the creator of the universe. And I have two worlds. There's the world that you see here, and there's the spiritual world, which is inside of this world, which is concealed. And I'm living in both of them. I'm not afraid of this gun. Your gun doesn't intimidate me. In the end, the Rebbe was totally not intimidated. He refused to leave the prison. He only left on Sunday. That was Gimel Tammuz that we just celebrated. And finally, that we see that in the end, that the Rebbe succeeded. The Rebbe was the one he defeated them. And all of the people that put him into prison very shortly after, they were all killed. They were all eliminated, all of them, which is not the case of the Rebbe. The Rebbe, we see what happened here. We have Chabad, is powerful to this day. One of the things that we can learn from this is that the leader of the generation is not affected negatively by the world, but exactly the opposite. He's willing to even risk his whole life just to spread out Judaism everywhere, and he has to live according to the Shulchan Aruch. This gives power. The laws of the Torah and the God that gave the laws, this gives us power. We have to make the firm decision that not to leave our connection to Judaism. And I just did one more story. One of the people that was there that beat him up said, Rebbe, why don't you? And he said, oh, I'm still a Rebbe by you. To you, I'm still a Rebbe. In other words, you don't believe in God, you don't believe in Torah, but you still call me Rebbe. You realize that I'm a Rebbe, right? You realize that I'm the leader of the Jewish people. So and the person didn't know what to say, right? It was, in other words, to leave the essence of what Judaism is. You can't. A Jew, no matter where a Jew is, no matter what situation a Jew is, a Jew can always make a decision that he can defy all the negativity of the world and even transform it to be a good, productive, beautiful, meaningful, blessed, happy place, which that's the goal of Judaism, that's the goal of Chabad, that's the goal of the Rebbe, and that goal will be accomplished very soon. Now let's do the Yom Yom.